And is it accurate that the clothing she was wearing also included denim shorts?
Yes.
And did you notice anything specific about the shorts?
They were unzipped.
Were they also unbuttoned?
Unbuttoned and unzipped.
Berkeley Springs is a charming small town nestled in Morgan County, West Virginia. It's renowned for its natural springs and is known as the country's first spa. Throughout the 19th century, Berkeley Springs flourished as a resort destination, attracting visitors from Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, bolstered by the arrival of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in the late 1800s. Today, the town still remains a beloved destination for its warm mineral springs, historic bathhouses and vibrant art communities. Families love to settle down here, drawn by its quaint charm, small town feel and safe environment, an ideal setting to raise children. Among those families were the Crossmans, with their 15-year-old daughter, Riley Crossman. Riley lived on Greenway Drive, a residential area bordering Greenway Cemetery. Like many teenagers in a relationship, Riley was always in touch with her boyfriend Hayden. They spent their nights chatting on the phone, FaceTime or texting. Wednesday night, on the 8th of May 2019, was no exception. But just after Hayden drifted off to sleep, Riley sent him a deeply unsettling text message. Somebody was in her bedroom. Riley Crossman was born to parents Chantal and Lance on the 22nd of December 2003. She had two younger brothers, Ryder and Riker, and a younger sister, Jade. The family originally lived in Martinsburg in West Virginia, but after Chantal and Lance separated, Riley divided her time between their two homes. Lance stayed in Martinsburg, but Chantal moved to Berkeley Springs with her children. It was only a 43-minute drive between their homes, so Lance remained a constant figure in his children's lives. Chantal moved on with another man named Andy McCauley, and he lived at the home with her and the kids. By 2015, Riley was a 15-year-old, 9th grade student at Berkeley Springs High School, where she was active in dance and choir activities. She was said to have the voice of an angel, and she was truly skilled when it came to the world of dance. Riley had always had a soft spot for children. Babies and children were always drawn to her, but none more than her younger siblings. She easily made friends with her warm and welcoming nature. Her friend, Elizabeth Tasker, recollected, "She was a sweetheart to me. She always had a way to put a smile on my face. I could tell her anything, and she kept it between us." Those who knew Riley said that she didn't have a mean bone in her body and tackled everything in her life with a smile on her face. Her friend, Ariana Coburn, recollected, "She was even happy about getting braces." According to Riley's parents, she was just a typical teenage girl. She was helpful, caring, and intelligent, but she was also stubborn and as dramatic as teenage girls come. But the family loved her deeply, and she them. On Wednesday the 8th of May 2019, Chantal arrived home from work at about 10 p.m. Andy was asleep downstairs in the recliner, while Ryder and Riker were dozing off in the living room. Chantal went upstairs to change out of her work clothes and noticed that her daughter, Riley's bedroom door was closed. Assuming that Riley was already asleep, in preparation for school the next morning, Chantal didn't think much of it. The next morning, Chantal woke up at about 7:15 a.m. She opened Riley's bedroom door and found it empty. This didn't surprise Chantal, as Riley usually left at about 7 a.m. to walk to school. However, when afternoon came and Riley hadn't returned home, Chantal grew concerned. She wondered if she had missed Riley coming in. Checking Riley's bedroom again, she found it still empty, just as it had been that morning. Chantal tried calling her daughter, but it went straight to voicemail. She then reached out to other family members, including Lance, but no one had seen or heard from Riley. Growing more anxious, Chantal headed to the high school campus to search for her.
I had started contacting some of her friends and done other things until that point, but I wasn't sure what was going on, if she had just, decided she wanted to hang out with her friends and break the rules, and I don't know. I was just trying to see if she was in school, because if she was in school, then I thought maybe she had just decided to, take her lumps.
But Riley wasn't there. At about 6 p.m. that night, her cell phone pinged with a message that made her heart sink. It was from the school, notifying her that Riley hadn't shown up that day. The automated text message intensified her panic. Desperate and frightened, Chantal called 911 to report her daughter as missing. Detectives arrived at the Crossman family home and took statements from Chantal and Andy. He told them about the last time he had seen her.
When's the last time you saw her?
Like 9, maybe 10-ish.
At night?
Yeah.
And what context was that?
She was here in the house. Our grandma was here till like 7.
Okay.
I think it was 7:30. She left.
Okay.
The kids were here out with me.
Right.
She was at work till 10, I think it was. She got home.
Okay.
9:30, 10 o'clock, she got home.
Okay. And what time did she go to bed?
Me?
No, the girl.
She went to bed probably, I don't know what time she went to bed, but all the kids were in the room by like 9:30.
Okay.
The kids actually were here. Me, Ryder's here, Riker was here, I was there.
Okay.
And she was upstairs.
She went upstairs. That's the last you saw her.
Yeah.
Did you see her leave in the morning?
No, I got up 4 o'clock in the morning, left 5.
Okay.
Go to work.
Where are you working at now?
Howard and Martinburg doing construction.
Okay.
The detectives then entered Riley's bedroom and discovered a pillow and sheet with what appeared to be bloodstains. The search for Riley began immediately, with detectives joined by about 70 volunteers and the Berkeley Springs Volunteer Fire Department. Starting at Riley's home, the search expanded to the surrounding areas, including Berkeley Springs State Park. Thousands of missing person flyers were printed, distributed throughout the area, and posted on social media. These flyers described Riley as a white female with blonde hair and blue eyes, standing at 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing about 125 pounds. When she was last seen, she was wearing a black hoodie and black leggings. Riley also wore glasses and had a distinctive scar in the centre of her forehead. Riley's friends and family took to social media, posting heartfelt appeals for her return. Her boyfriend, Hayden, was beside himself with worry, writing, "Doing everything I can to try and find her. I haven't slept since she's been missing, and I physically cannot sleep or function without her. I'm worse than ever right now, and I need her to be here and safe." As the search pressed on, detectives urged the public to keep an eye out for Riley. Her family stressed that her disappearance was completely out of character. Riley had never run away before, and her family were extremely worried about her welfare. They strongly believed that somebody had abducted her, making time of the essence. However, despite their fears, an Amber Alert was not issued due to the lack of evidence of an abduction and the absence of a vehicle description. Her disappearance prompted the involvement of the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, as well as the Morgan County Sheriff's Office, who announced they were dedicating all of their resources to ensure Riley's safe return. Sheriff Casey Borer announced, "We're investigating all possibilities. We don't have any belief at this point in time that she ran away." The days continued to trickle past with no sign of Riley, and the search for her continued. A large coordinated search was planned for the 15th of May, and volunteers were asked to meet officials at 9 a.m. near the Office of Emergency Services in the Old War Memorial Hospital parking lot. Detectives also asked everybody to check in any sheds, bins or garages. It was quite a grim comment, suggesting they believed that Riley was dead, and they were searching for her body in places where somebody may dispose of a body. Before the searchers set out that morning, Lance thanked them all for their efforts. His voice shook with emotion as he told them his family were hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. The searchers began at the parking lot and then fanned out further afield. The parking lot was surrounded in dense woodland and close to the Potomac River, which separated West Virginia and Maryland. The searchers scoured through the dense woodland and were asked to check in any vacant buildings, abandoned vehicles, and bodies of water. They searched areas in and around Berkeley Springs, Great Capicon, and Sleepy Creek with the assistance of canine sniffer dogs and drones. Over 300 volunteers participated in the massive search, including some of Riley's friends from school. One of them, Austin Thacker, commented, "She was very helpful to anybody else, so it only felt right to come out and try to help find her." Sadly, nothing of interest was discovered, and Sheriff Borer announced, "We'll be evaluating the investigative leads from today, and we'll regroup tomorrow." While this was ongoing, Riley's parents appeared on Dateline to talk about their daughter's disappearance. They said they didn't believe that her boyfriend was involved in any way, and that she would never have run away from home. Lance commented, "She just wouldn't run off. She's never hurt anyone in her life. She's very gentle." As part of the investigation, detectives sought to retrace Riley's last known movements to establish exactly when she vanished. When Chantel returned home from work that night, she didn't actually see her daughter. The last time that she was physically seen was by her grandmother at about 7 p.m. that night when she went into her bedroom, a routine ending to her day. But Riley's digital footprint provided more clues. A video call with her boyfriend Hayden lasted up until 10:30 p.m, but after this, Riley's cell phone fell silent. When Hayden woke the next morning and checked his cell phone, he noticed a text message from Riley. At 11:01 p.m, she had texted him, "Andy's in my room." 12 minutes later, she texted him again, writing, "I'm scared, babe." At the time of Riley's disappearance, her mother had been in a relationship with a man named Andy McCauley. After detectives learned of the ominous text message, they began looking into him as a person of interest. In tandem, they continued to trawl through the tips they had received, and they came across one that was of particular interest. According to an eyewitness, they had seen a green Dodge 2500 work truck with a ladder rack backed into the family's home at 10 a.m. on the 8th of May. The description of the vehicle matched the description of the vehicles owned by the construction company that Chantel's boyfriend Andy worked for. But Andy didn't have a driver's license. Andy was asked to come to the police station for an interview, so they could figure out his movements from that day and the night before. He confirmed that he had been home and asleep on the couch when Chantel returned home from work. But while he originally said he slept the entire night, he changed his story. He said that he woke at about 2 a.m. the next morning and placed a call to a man named Bobby Golden. Bobby was the husband of Morgan County Magistrate Deborah Ditto, who was Riley's grandmother. Andy told detectives that he had purchased drugs from Bobby that morning, specifically cocaine. He said that he then returned home, and the next morning he was picked up by his co-worker and driven to his job as a construction worker in the Red Hill subdivision on Ridge Road South near Hedgesville.
When did you go to work that morning?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock? So you made it back to the house by 4?
Yeah, like I said, literally, I was right there and back. I went there, I was supposed to get up at 4 o'clock. I woke up 2:30 feeling like shit. Couldn't have it.
Okay.
I went and got something that I wanted to get before I left to work at 4 o'clock. Well, I get up at 4 o'clock, leave at 5.
Okay.
Andy said he never left work until that evening, and by the time he returned home, Riley was missing. However, detectives told him that somebody had seen him driving one of the company's trucks in the area. Andy then changed his story once more and said that he did actually leave work that day and borrowed a co-worker's truck. He said that he drove the truck to Eagle Plaza store where he purchased drugs from somebody. He said that he didn't personally know this man and didn't know how to get in contact with him to corroborate his story. But Andy was then told that the truck was actually seen at the family's home. He once more changed his story and said that he had driven the truck home but was there to get drugs for himself and a co-worker. He said that he regularly took cocaine but didn't use needles and only sniffed it.
Were you at that house the entire time fixing the shelves?
No.
Okay, where were you at?
I was at the other house.
Okay.
I went and got some more drugs.
Okay.
Well, how do they know to randomly meet you in a parking lot?
Well, that day they didn't know to randomly meet me in the parking lot. I called them that day.
Okay, you're not, listen, bud, you're not being honest. Okay, you're not being honest with us.
I know about the drugs.
Okay. There's a lot you're not
I don't want to give people's names out.
We're not arresting people.
Shot, you know what I mean?
We're not here to arrest anybody for drugs.
Drug dealers on this, okay?
Okay.
What I tell you before, Riley, we're drug dealers. I would like to hope that in this hand you see your drug dealer friends, and over here's Riley, but yet these people here I want to close up and protect.
Okay, well, no, I don't want to protect them.
So you're down there for about an hour and a half for him to come, and you get your stuff, you use your stuff, and then you go back.
Good job, yeah.
Okay.
Andy said he was only in the house for about 30 minutes, after which he travelled back to work. He was then allowed to leave the police station after questioning, but detectives continued in their investigation. They were curious about Andy's story and found it strange he never admitted to being at the home that morning until presented with the evidence. The detectives made their way to Andy's place of employment and spoke with some of his colleagues. The person who owned the truck, Johnny Walker, said that it was out of character for Andy to use his truck and that he had never used it in the past. Johnny typically drove Andy to and from work. However, on this specific day, Andy had asked Johnny whether he could borrow his truck. He also asked the owner of the business, Howard Rourke, if he could use some trash bags to clean up a work site. Another one of his co-workers then told detectives that Andy had cocaine in his possession that day before he left the workplace. He said it would have made no sense that Andy travelled back home to pick up some cocaine when he already had some. Detectives now firmly believe that Andy travelled back home that morning for another reason. With the circumstantial evidence against Andy mounting, detectives continued to investigate his story. They reached out to Bobby Golden, and he confirmed that Andy had purchased drugs from him in the early morning hours. However, there was a discrepancy. Andy told detectives he had purchased cocaine, but Bobby said he had actually purchased Suboxone strips. Bobby noticed that Andy's hair was soaking wet, and he appeared to be in a hurry. Suspicions continued to grow, so detectives obtained a search warrant for the pickup truck. When it was searched, they found fresh, dry wall mud splatter in the bed of the truck. The detectives called in the assistance of a cadaver dog named Rocky, and when he smelled the bed of the truck, he alerted to the scent of human decomposition. He was specifically interested in the area underneath the utility box. Detectives decided to analyse CCTV footage from that morning to try and establish Andy's movements further. Surveillance showed him leaving work at about 9 a.m. and travelling west on Route 9 towards the home. He didn't appear back in work until 1:40 p.m, even though he told detectives he was only at the home for half an hour. Afterwards, detectives decided to interview Andy for a second time. They questioned him about the inconsistencies in his first statement, highlighting how they were told he already had cocaine when he left work that morning. According to Andy, when he arrived home that morning, he shot cocaine with a needle. This contradicted his earlier statement where he said he only sniffed cocaine and said he didn't own any needles. The detectives then asked Andy about his movements after this. He told them he travelled back Route 9 towards Martinsburg, but detectives knew that this wasn't true. They had scoured through hours of surveillance footage, and Andy never travelled back to work along Route 9. However, surveillance did show Andy near Apple Harvest Drive, travelling east at 12:41 p.m. Andy refused to accept this. He said to detectives that he wasn't anywhere near that area, but detectives had the surveillance footage. The topic then turned to the ominous findings in Andy's truck. He told detectives that he had been driving with a container of drywall mud in the bed of the truck, which spilled as he drove home that morning. The detectives then informed Andy for the first time about the final message Riley had sent to her boyfriend.
What if I told you her last text to her boyfriend were saying, don't talk, because she still has the FaceTime on? Andy's in here. I'm afraid.
That's what it said.
What if I told you that?
I would say that's crazy.
100%.
I would say that's crazy. There's no reason Riley would ever be scared of me. She never was scared of me, ever.
I can put my hand on the Bible and tell you I saw those texts today.
Well, I like to see him because I know Riley ain't scared of me. I know she ain't.
Not only that, she said you were in here and she was in her bedroom because the FaceTime was still on.
I was never in her room.
That's not what she's saying.
I don't know. I was never in her room. I don't go in her room. Once in a while, I'll go in her room, but not hardly ever.
Then why would she say that?
I don't know. Unless she wasn't in her room. She might have been in my room folding clothes at that point.
No, this is way past your 9:30 time frame.
I was downstairs at after 9:30, so
Andy, I'm not lying to you.
I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know. I was not in her room, for one. And for two, the kid's not scared of her. There's no reason for her to be scared of me. I've been there in her life for a year and a half. Taking care of her, giving her everything she
But
needs.
what we're saying, like, I get that, I hear you, but what we're saying is that's what she's saying. So obviously to her, she's afraid of something.
But Andy continued to deny any involvement in Riley's disappearance.
Okay, you understand when I have to talk to you.
Yeah, I understand. So I talk to me, that's why I'm here. That's why I've been here every time you ask me to be here. But I don't do nothing with the kid.
So where is she?
I don't know. If I knew, I would have her home for her mother. This is starting to get aggravating. I don't know what the kid is. If I did, I would have her home. They gotta have a drug problem. That has nothing to do with this case. You know, the way you guys just keep pushing. It has nothing to do with Riley. My drug problem. It has nothing to do with Riley. Yeah, it sucks. It does fall back. Yeah, I'm her stepdad. I shouldn't be doing drugs. Yeah, I understand all that. But that has nothing to do with Riley missing me. You understand what I'm saying? That has nothing to do with Riley being missing. Me doing drugs. I don't understand why you guys keep pushing that.
Since detectives didn't have anything other than circumstantial evidence, Andy was allowed to return home. But within just hours, a grisly discovery was made, and Andy was thrust into the spotlight. That afternoon, officers from the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources were searching along Tuscarora Pike. It was a rural and mountainous area, surrounded by dense woodland and winding mountainous roads. The road meandered its way over the mountain to the village of Shanghai and the Back Creek Valley. As they were searching along a steep embankment, a pungent odour overcame them. It was the unmistakable stench of decomposition. As they tried to locate the source of the smell, they came across a number of sheet metal screws on the ground. They were the same brand that were found inside the truck that Andy had been driving and attached to his work belt. The searchers made their way down the embankment and saw something dark on the ground in the near distance. There were flies buzzing all around it, and the stench was now completely overpowering. Once they got closer to the object, they could see that it was a human body in a very advanced state of decomposition. It was lying on top of contractor-grade trash bags, much like the ones Andy had taken from work, with one shoe and a pair of long pants. Not too far up the embankment, there was another bag that matched the one that the body was lying on top of. While identification couldn't be made by sight alone, the body was clearly Riley. She was wearing a shirt with a Native American print, and her shorts were unzipped and unbuttoned. Her underwear was also ripped. The search team called detectives who arrived on the scene promptly, followed by forensic experts. Almost immediately, detectives observed something on her body that stuck out to them. She had drywall mud on her right shoulder and right foot. The area where Riley's body was found was an area that was well known to Andy McCauley. It was an alternative to McCauley's normal route to work along Route 9, and since detectives knew he didn't take Route 9 home that afternoon, he must have driven this route. When the detectives checked surveillance footage from homes in the area, they found McCauley driving the truck. He was observed travelling towards the top of North Mountain and then travelling in the opposite direction less than half an hour later. Detectives believed more than ever that McCauley had killed Riley, placed her body in his truck, and then disposed of her down the embankment while returning to work. But the question still remained as to why. After the scene along Tuscarora Pike was photographed, documented and examined, Dr. Donald Shirley, Berkeley County Medical Examiner, took charge of the body. He transported Riley to the office of the State Medical Examiner in Charleston for an autopsy to be completed. The body was in an advanced state of decomposition, but dental records confirmed that it was indeed Riley. The decomposition was so severe that the head, neck, and front of the chest was missing some soft tissue. Riley's eyes and some internal organs were also missing. Unfortunately, the decomposition meant that a cause of death couldn't be determined. But still, the pathologist determined that Riley was the victim of a homicide. There were no external injuries, but it was speculated that she may have died from smothering. After Riley's body was found, Andy McCauley was immediately arrested and charged with one count of murder. That night, more than 300 people attended a candlelight vigil in Riley's memory at Berkeley Springs State Park. Sheriff Bower told those that had gathered that the effort to find Riley didn't result in the closure they hoped her family, friends and community would have. He stated, "We wanted a better outcome." A number of pastors spoke to the crowd before candles distributed throughout them were lit from one candle that was affixed with an image of Riley on the side. Among the pastors was Josh Ryder, Riley's former teacher. He poignantly said of her, "She was able to love, show compassion to kids, that I wish all students could do at her age when I had her in the 6th grade." Then on the 23rd of May, Riley's father and stepmother asked her people to light up the dark with lanterns that Saturday at 11:11 p.m. They had purchased 800 lanterns and were going to distribute them to those who attended Riley's viewing at the South Berkeley Chapel. They stated, "Our hope is that they can be seen all over the Panhandle. We encourage anyone who can't make it to the service but has been touched by this tragedy to go out and purchase a lantern before Saturday. Every single act of kindness we have received during this dark time has served as a small light among that darkness." Riley would be so impressed with this community of family, friends, neighbours and total strangers who have come together in her name. The case continued to work its way through the justice system, and in January McCauley was indicted by a grand jury for the murder of Riley. He was also indicted for concealment of a deceased human body. This meant that there was enough evidence against him for the case to proceed to trial. He subsequently pleaded not guilty, and the trial was scheduled for the 5th of May in Morgan County Circuit Court. Jury selection began towards the end of April, but it was then announced that the trial had been postponed until September. The reason was because Macaulay had tested positive for COVID-19. There was some debate over him appearing in trial over video link, but this was ultimately rejected. But before the new trial was ready to begin, a grand jury convened and additionally charged Macaulay with the felony charge of death of a child by a custodian by child abuse. In the indictment, it said that he was accused of inflicting upon Riley, quote, a child under his care, substantial physical pain, illness, or any impairment condition, thereby causing the death of her, end quote. By the 28th of September, the jury was selected, and the trial was ready to begin in Morgan County Circuit Court. During opening statements, prosecutor Dan James described how life had been going well for Riley. She was making her way through high school, had just finished a dance recital, and was enjoying spending time with her boyfriend.
You're going to hear throughout the course of this trial, it's that teenage love that you have when you're at that stage in your life that she was joined to hate. Up until May 7th, things were going pretty well for her. Unfortunately, on the evening of May 7th, her last communication that she ever had with her boyfriend was that Andy is in my room and that she's scared. Those text messages were sent out between 11:01 p.m. and 11:17 p.m.
He told the jury that after 11 p.m. on the 7th of May, Riley had texted Hayden that Andy was in her room and she was scared. He said that when Chantal came home from work that night, Macaulay was sitting in a recliner in the living room, but he wasn't actually asleep. He was just pretending to be asleep. He detailed how when Riley's body was found, she was on top of several contractor weight trash bags. Macaulay's boss had told detectives that he had shown up to work and asked for 3 bags.
But this particular morning, Andy, without them being handed to him, he walks up to the truck. He opens Howard's truck door and says he needs 3 of the trash bags. And Howard saw him take 3 trash bags and said, well, what are you doing with those? Well, I need to clean up at Tabler Estates. Howard will also tell you that when Andy came back to work later on, not knowing where he was, that Andy kind of looked a little disheveled and his shoes were untied. Something was strange about him.
The prosecutor also detailed to the jury how cadaver dogs had picked up a scent of decomposition in the trunk, and that Riley's body had drywall compound on it that matched the drywall compound in the truck. The defence refuted that Macaulay was responsible, telling the jury he had zero motive to kill her. Defence attorney Andy Arnold said that there were 5 other people in the home around the time she disappeared, presumably referring to her younger siblings and her grandmother. He stated,
Look, we share the horror of this tragic death. We do. But there's a second horror possible, and that would be the unjust conviction of an innocent man. We anticipate that in this trial, the state will bring you a lot of speculation, a lot of theory, some circumstantial evidence, and imagination. Please do not let this overwhelm you and leverage you toward a conviction by your emotion. Finally, I'm going to relieve you of a task, a job that you might think is yours, but is not. And that is to ultimately know what happened. Someone mentioned during voir dire that this was a whodunit case, and that is entirely not correct.
The defence attorney said that there was no proof of how Riley had actually died, and no evidence of a weapon that was used. Testimony got underway, and the pathologist, Dr. Peter Kubizek, spoke about Riley's autopsy. He told prosecutor James that he couldn't rule out smothering as a cause of death. There were no broken bones or evidence of any injuries, and there were no drugs or alcohol in Riley's system. The pathologist said that based on such, he classified her manner of death as homicidal violence. He also spoke about the clothing Riley was found wearing.
Doctor, is it accurate that the report also reflects that the shirt that was located on Riley Crossman's body was what was described as a Native American print?
Yes.
And is it accurate that the clothing she was wearing also included denim shorts?
Yes.
And did you notice anything specific about the shorts?
They were unzipped.
Were they also unbuttoned?
Unbuttoned and unzipped.
Okay. And do you remember if Riley Crossman's body at that time had shoes on?
There was one shoe on.
And do you remember if there was anything specific about those shoes? Well, strike that. Do you know if the shoe was tied or untied?
If I recall, it was untied.
And do you recall anything about a adherent white chalk-like material located on the shoe?
Yes, there was some.
Police Sergeant Wolf also testified about the discovery of Riley's body.
I want to next direct your attention to the victim's clothing. Do you recall what she was wearing?
I do. At the time that we were present, there was a shirt. It was bunched up around the neck area here. Later, when they took it off and hung it up to dry, as I recall, it was like a Native American or tribal pattern type shirt. She had on small blue jean shorts that were unbuttoned, and there was a zip. The zipper was kind of a unique. It was like a ring type zipper. The button had like a little A. I don't know if that's Abercrombie or what, but it was the design pattern. The shorts were kind of torn a little bit in the back, but the shorts themselves were like small type shorts, blue jean type denim shorts, and then the underwear on the child victim was red, like a larger type band, and it was. I noticed that we noted, and we discussed this with the doctor, that they were both pulled high. They were unusually pulled high. They didn't look. I don't know how to describe that. Just when you put on your clothes, or when you put, on your own clothes, you pull your
hiked up.
Your height, yeah. I mean, I don't know how to say that, but these looked hiked up, like even if maybe somebody pulled them on quickly, or maybe something had been pulled on, but they were hiked. That's something that Sergeant Wojtek and I discussed, was just the fact that they didn't look comfortable the way they were put on. They were pulled too high. I don't know how to. I don't know how they.
Do you recall if the victim's vaginal area was partially exposed?
It was. It was because the underpants were pulled into that area, so to say. I'm trying. So yes.
He said that there was drywall mud to her legs, and that she was found on top of trash bags. When the owner of the construction company that Macaulay worked for, Howard Rourke, testified, he told the court that he had asked for trash bags to clean up his site. He stated, "I'm pretty sure he took 3. There were 3 found at the crime scene." Howard said that on the day Riley vanished, Macaulay was gone for 4 or 5 hours, something he had never done before. Brandy Eggman, the dog handler of Rocky, then testified about him detecting the presence of human decomposition in Macaulay's truck. Defense attorney Daniel Kirkland asked her if he could alert to something simple, like blood from a bloody nose. She confirmed that he could. Prosecutor James then interjected and questioned. If there was a body in the back of his truck, wrapped in a trash bag, bleeding from the mouth, would Rocky alert? She responded, yes. During the trial, the jury also got to hear a recorded conversation between Macaulay and Riley's mother, Chantel, from the 15th of May. In the recording, he admitted to taking cocaine and heroin on the night that Riley disappeared.
None of us firmly believe it's you, but until the police believe it's not you, they don't look anywhere. I have all of this everywhere, all this tips. I have 1,000 text messages. Lance has 1,000 text messages. She has 1,000 text messages of all these other things, and they won't look at them because they only think of you.
I know. That's what
I get that. I understand why they're looking at you. Your choices that night were they were.
Yeah.
And if you had made better choices that night and every night up to that, you would not even be in this position. So you are the person to blame for what's happening to you right now.
Chantel asked him if he was in control of his facilities and then asked, "You didn't stumble into Riley's room thinking it was me?" Macaulay responded, "No, come on." Chantel was overcome with emotion as she told Macaulay, "Everyone failed her. I know what you could have done, not be a junkie. I can't figure out how she left our house. So I'm stuck here with whiteboards and study notes wondering where she is. I was leaving you anyway. This is not the life I wanted for my kids." When Chantel testified, she told the jury about the moment she learned her daughter was dead.
Fortunately, you received the tragic news about Riley, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you remember where you were?
I was in the sheriff's office.
And eventually, law enforcement in my office had to show you photos of Riley's body. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember the clothes that were found on Riley's body?
Yes.
This photograph right here, is that the same shirt that was on Riley's body?
I believe so, yes.
And Mr. James, for the record, that would be Exhibit 28.
Exhibit, I believe so. Ms. Oakley, would you confirm
Yes,
that?
it says 28 on the back.
Okay. Do you remember the type of pants or shorts that were on Riley's body?
Yes, they were shorts she would never have worn outside of our house.
The jury also got to see all of the surveillance footage showing Macaulay's movements from the day Riley went missing. The focus then shifted to forensic evidence. Experts David Miller and Melissa Runyon testified about the blood stains to Riley's pillow, sheet and blanket. The stains were indeed Riley's blood, but some were mixed with saliva. In her underwear, they also found blood that came back as a match to Riley. The jury next heard from a man named Dominic Mongold, who knew Riley from church. He had also been incarcerated with Macaulay at the Eastern Regional Jail. His testimony was to try and show that Macaulay may have had a sexual interest in Riley. Since her body was so decomposed, it couldn't be determined whether she had been sexually assaulted. However, her clothing was found in a manner that gave that impression. It had been removed, and then she had been redressed. Dominic told the courtroom that Macaulay had asked him multiple times a week if Riley had ever sent him inappropriate pictures. Dominic said that she had, but he told the jury he only said this to get Macaulay off his back. His testimony suggested that Macaulay had an interest in knowing what Riley was sending to boys her own age. It was a very inappropriate and random thing for the boyfriend of a teenage girl's mother to be asking. According to Chantel and Denise Deaver, the mother of Macaulay's own children, whenever he took speedballs, which is a combination of heroin and cocaine, his sexual desire was heightened. It was a possibility that Macaulay found himself alone with Riley that night and attempted to sexually assault her. But when she resisted, he killed her. It was also a possibility that he went into her bedroom with the intention to kill her so that he could sexually assault her. The final witness for the prosecution was Riley's boyfriend, Hayden. He described their relationship and said they texted and FaceTimed all throughout the day, every day. The state rested after just 2 days of testimony, following which defense attorney Arnold asked the judge to dismiss 2 of the 3 felony charges against Macaulay. He argued that the state hadn't provided sufficient evidence to show he had murdered or abused Riley, and that there was a lack of evidence. Indeed, there was no direct evidence to connect Macaulay to the murder, just circumstantial evidence. The defense attorney also said Macaulay didn't qualify as a custodian or act in a parental role, therefore undermining the charge of death of a child by custodian by child abuse. However, Judge McLaughlin rejected the argument. It was anticipated that the defence would have a number of witnesses, but after the judge rejected the argument, they announced that they were calling nobody. During opening statements, they had mentioned how 5 other people were in the home that night, but offered no testimony or evidence regarding this. They then rested their case, which meant it was now up to the jury to determine whether enough evidence had been presented against Macaulay for a conviction. But first, it was time for closing arguments. Prosecutor James referenced the text message that Riley had sent to her boyfriend. He said to the jury, "This is a voice from beyond the grave. This is all you need. Andy's in my room. I'm scared." He further said that blood and saliva were found on the pillowcase and sheet, and suggested that Riley was smothered to death in her bedroom. The jury returned with a verdict after deliberating for just over 4 hours over the course of 2 days.
In the Circuit Court for Morgan County, West Virginia, the State of West Virginia versus Andrew J. Macaulay Jr., case number 25F35. We, the members of the Pettit jury, as to the issues joined, find the defendant, Andrew J. Macaulay Jr., as follows. Count 1, murder. Guilty of murder in the first degree. As to count 2, death of a child by a custodian by child abuse. Guilty. As to count 3, concealment of a deceased human body. Guilty. Signed today's date by the foreperson.
They found Andy Macaulay guilty of first-degree murder, death of a child by a custodian by child abuse, and concealment of a body. As the verdict was announced, Macaulay showed no sign of emotion. He just stared directly ahead. The rest of the courtroom responded. From the public gallery, sighs of relief and tears of joy filled the air. The trial then moved to the mercy phase, which is when the jury needs to recommend a sentence that will be imposed later by a judge. Riley's father, Lance, provided a statement during this phase of the trial. His face welled up with emotion as tears rolled down his cheeks.
How do you summarize your child's life? How do I explain what she meant to us? I can't. Riley was the type of child you hope to have one day. She was kind and gentle and loving and full of life. Riley will be forever frozen in time, only living on in our memories now. She will forever be 15 years old to us. Counsel mentioned 15 years. In 15 years, he may be eligible for parole. She only got 15 years. That's all she had. 15. So if this is a case of mercy, like Mr. James said, where was the mercy in this crime? Where was it? Where was the mercy when he walked into her room where she's supposed to feel safe? Where's the mercy when he attacked her? Where's the mercy when he put her in a trash bag and dumped her off the side of the road like garbage? Mercy was nowhere to be found in this crime, and I would ask that no mercy is given in this sentence.
Ultimately, the jury recommended life in prison without the possibility of parole when Macaulay was later sentenced. Andy Macaulay returned to court on the 5th of November to learn his fate. The courtroom fell silent as victim impact statements were presented from Riley's loved ones. Her mother, Chantel, described her daughter as kind and amazing. She said she would never get to see her daughter graduate, get married, or have a child of her own. She then added, "Andy took all that away from us." Chantel further said that Macaulay remained silent and watched while she was in agony during the 9 days her daughter was missing, when he knew exactly what happened to her. Judge Deborah McLaughlin then addressed Macaulay. She sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She then added, "I don't know if we will ever get an answer to the question of why." Outside of court, Prosecutor James provided a statement. He said, "Andy does not care about anyone other than himself. I think justice was served, but I have a different idea of what justice should be. We knew Riley. It's a tragedy, but we are satisfied. Macaulay can go to jail, and they can throw away the key as far as I'm concerned." Well, besties, that is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to say a massive thank you to my newest supporters up on Patreon, Jamie and Mary. You can join us up on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Patreon really helps independent shows continue, and as a one-woman show, I really do appreciate the support up on there. If you join up on Patreon, you get access to ad-free and early release episodes of Morbidology, bonus episodes of Morbidology Plus, as well as behind the scenes, which includes bonus videos, audio and case files for some of the episodes. And I also send out a handwritten thank you card along with some cool merch. If you'd like to support the show in another way, please consider leaving me a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. I really do appreciate the feedback. Remember to check us out at morbidology.com for more information about this episode and to read some true crime articles. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and have an amazing week.